now for a day or so.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
This time of year.
Well, she said they had gas.
Morning, Miss Carol.
Morning, Miss Carol. Did we go on? Yeah, there we are.
She's there now, I see. Maybe.
She has gas, but she said it don't work without electricity, which makes sense. It has to have a fan and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Morning, Carol. I was just telling Mark that you might have been a little cold this week because you didn't have any power.
Yeah, that's a bad deal this time of year.
Yeah, it's real bad. They had I think they had a lot of trees down in Michigan. I heard about that on the news.
They got the ice storm, did they?
I think, well, I don't know if was it Carol? Was it ice storm or was it wind? We had some pretty wicked winds back this way in parts of the country, so I'm not sure which. But I'm sure she can inform us.
Well, I was really hoping I was gonna we were gonna do a little field trip just for a couple seconds this morning.
Yeah.
I sent you a photo. I had a cow moose bedded right beside my grandkids' jungle gym, and was hoping she was gonna stay there till the show started, but she got up and left a little while ago. So can you see her there?
Wait a minute, I was reading the gather around, little grandchildren, and go play on your jungle gym. Oh, she's right by the fence.
She's just on the other side of the fence from the little picket fence from the jungle gym. So,
but she's not there now.
She could step over that at any second.
Yeah. So she's not there now.
No, she got up and went back down on the river. So she left out. But
well, feel free to take us on a field trip anytime she comes back or something.
I took the computer outside a little while ago while she was still there, and my camera just fogged up instantly as soon as I walked out the door.
I bet it did.
Because it's negative 12 right now. So.
Yeah, negative 12 from even if it's chilly in your house, I'm sure it's much warmer than outside.
Yeah, I mean, it's 62 or something in the house. So
Carol wants to know if we get to see the moose.
Well, not unless you can get the picture to come up.
Well, maybe I can. So bear with me a moment. I'll mess with that. Go ahead and finish telling us about your hats. I cut you off on
that. What was I telling about the hat?
You were describing the.
Well, hat. I mean, I wear Stormy Crummers half the year, and they're you
were telling me about the.
So I have one that's made out of oilskin.
Well, you said
which is the proper way of saying that word, by the way. My wife says it's not, but it is. Oil is the right way to say oil.
What does she call it? Waxcloth?
No, she calls it oil.
Oh, oil. That ain't right.
And we say oil.
Oh, it's oilskin. How do you say it, Carol? We'll get to see the moose if she comes
Carol
back.
Says oil.
Let me see here.
But it was just anyway, I've got that hat I wear in the fall that's orange, so I could, hunt in it or whatever. And I wore it for work too when we were out checking hunters.
But you also said you had one from work that was
yeah, so they had you had two options. You could wear this goofy looking green hat that they provided us that had a patch on it that looked like Frankenstein's head. and some of them had a ball on the top of them, and some of them didn't have a ball on it. And if you wore the one without the ball, you really looked like Frankenstein.
A ball on top.
Yeah. Or you could go by what they call railroader caps, which were made by a different company than Stormy Cromer, but they're functionally the same hat as a Stormy Cromer, except they had flaps inside the hat. that you could fold down, put over your ears, and I love those hats. And you can't even buy. I can't even find them anymore.
Oh wow!
I mean, you know, if it got for real cold where your ears were starting to turn black on the tips, you might need like a flap over your. I don't. My thermostat's set too high, and I rarely get where I'm getting like frostbite. But every now and again, it gets cold enough.
Well, your stormy
There's a Canadian in the house. He's up and about.
He is. I bet it's colder up there than it is in your house. At your house, I mean.
Well, I just read a letter that the state of Wyoming sent to Canada yesterday, asking them to take their damn weather back. we weren't appreciating, you know, way below zero, and
you were over it.
we would like them to come get their weather and take it home with them.
What do you think about that, Mike? You think it's true? I say it the way Mark said. I say,
Carol says it all. Good for Carol.
You know, I think most real people do.
Canadians don't refund anybody.
There you go, Mike. Unless it's in American dollars. Not Diana told me she'd take it back if it was American money.
Well, we haven't seen above zero for days now, and it's wearing thin. We're supposed to be 30 on Sunday. We'll see if that actually happens.
It was 80 here just a day or two ago.
Well, that's what I called my folks, and it was 75 degrees in Jackson, Ohio, 3 or 4 days ago, and Dad was bragging about it. I'm just like, you're gonna the vortex is gonna come over there, and you're gonna pay for bragging about it.
That's right. I bet they've got it now.
Oh, -40 with the wind chill. That's what we've been dealing with, Mike. It's been, thank God the wind hasn't been blowing 25 or 30 miles an hour, but it doesn't take much to run it down way cold.
Well, I'm trying to
Morning, John.
Trying to find that picture, dang it. Where'd it go?
Well, I sent it to your email or to your cell phone.
I know you put it on my phone, and I've got my phone hooked up to my computer. Wait a minute, maybe I just found it. Okay, open up.
So my jarhead buddy from Rock Springs, his wife went to visit her 97-year-old grandmother in northeast Colorado about a week ago now. And she was coming home, and she got as far as Laramie, and she's been stuck in Laramie for 5 days now because the interstate's been closed.
Yeah, I heard about that.
And she paid like $110 for her first motel room.
Oh.
And she's up to $260 for a room now.
Oh, so they're gouging.
So they're like, you know, they're playing the price gouge thing, and it's just been nuts. But we've been close. I actually heard the town my son lives in mentioned on the national radio yesterday because the interstate had been closed so long, and that was where the closure had gotten to. And heck, they don't even have hardly any snow compared to the rest of the state. I don't know why it's closed there, but
was it closed at South Pass and beyond, or?
Well, South Pass isn't on the interstate.
Oh, okay.
It's on Highway 287, and it's been closed for a week and a half now. But
Okay, well, I don't have none of my pictures are opening. Why?
because you're having technological issues. We've
Too much. It happens too often.
about 5 days ago, every major highway in the state of Wyoming was closed.
Officially closed.
Every one of them. Yep.
Wow.
Which I've never seen.
Well, it's raining today. We might have to close everything here. It's only 56. That's what back in East Tennessee we call being a smart ass. Carol sent John a. Well, there it is.
You're not going to be able to see that, but that's my.
Hold it still right there just a minute.
That's my.
There's the moose right there.
That's my grandbaby's jungle gym in my front yard, and there's a cow moose laying right on the other side of the picket fence.
And that's the moose, the wild moose ride right back there in the back.
So I said, bundle up, grandchildren, and go out, and you might need to pad up too, because she could step across that fence any second.
If she comes back, Mark will show it to us.
But she went. I was hoping she was going to stay long enough I could take us on a field trip, but she got up and left. So
Carol said, oops, I'll put that up there. She said, sorry to hear that. All the hotels within a 45-mile radius of here were booked up. Yeah, I bet. Except for the fancy one downtown, which you could get
for $939.
I bet you could.
I don't think there's a motel even in Jackson Hole that costs that much.
Sure.
Holy moly.
Isn't that I'd
just sleep in the front seat of my truck.
Yeah, I probably would too.
I have hundreds of times anyway. It's just like,
well, true. That would be. I hate it when people take advantage of that. I mean,
it's just blatant, you know.
Well, yeah, and if they were in the same position, they'd be raising hell too because they wouldn't.
And this is just like the Comfort Inn in Laramie, which is, they got good beds with. I don't think they got bed bugs right now.
right now.
But it's not like it's the Ritz or something, it's just not. It's just a regular Comfort Inn on the interstate.
I wonder how long it'll be.
And they all look alike, they all look exactly alike, and Motel 6 and all that, and they're charging $250 a night now for motels. All the truck stops are completely jammed full of truckers right now.
I bet they are. I wonder when they predicting any time to get it open.
No, and the guys over, there's a great big truck stop outside of Cheyenne, and I don't know how many spaces it's got, but they've got thousands of semi trucks stopped there. And I guess their company, they did an article with some of the guys over there the other day, and their companies call them and say, well, you're shut down till we tell you otherwise. So they're living in those sleepers and it's got to be a rough way to make a living this time of year. And
yeah, I would say so.
One of the guys they interviewed, he'd been doing long haul stuff for like 5 years, and he's a Florida native, and he's like, I've never seen anything even remotely close to this ever, like nothing like this.
Carol said something else. She said it's on the U of M campus, which rich parents stay there when they come for football. Yeah. Oh. There's probably one of those here too then, Carol. I'd be willing to bet. I'm guessing the regular price is lower, but still ridiculously high. Yeah, most football people can't, they don't come to pay that.
And it's
Hey, Francisco, good morning. I'm hunting bear because I was looking for a topic. And I think we've actually settled on something.
What?
Well, I mean,
What?
sort of.
How sucky the weather is in the Great Plains?
Well, that's a good topic for right now because that leads to all kinds of, you know, Eastern minds want to know how bad it is.
Well, it's
If
bad.
Mike's got you beat, I mean, -40. I mean, gee, many Christmas.
Well, we've been that several times this week with the wind chill. Several times. I mean, when you walk outside, if you got facial hair,
Yeah,
your mustache and your beard immediately becomes like a block of ice.
yeah, they freeze up.
And it's
Like it says, you know it's cold outside when your hydraulic lines freeze.
exactly.
Do they turn to slush, Mike, or do they actually freeze up solid? I was thinking they kind of got real thick and slushy.
They gel. So hydraulics tend to gel.
Yeah.
And maybe they get colder than that, but they, you can't start a diesel pickup. You can't nothing.
That's
just
why you don't shut one down this time of year. You just let it idle.
Yeah, and everybody out here's got like plugs hanging out of their vehicles,
Yeah.
and you got a block heater in, and yeah, it's been a long, cold, bad one out here, and I'm sure in lots of other places in the States and especially in Canada, but awful. We have about 110 pronghorn. This critter right here with radio collars on them over just east of me, about 30 miles east of me, and 30% of them are dead already, and it's not even March. March is typically our big. Well, maybe it is March. No, it's not March yet.
Not quite. Almost.
But March is usually the month. March and April are usually the months where deer and pronghorn just kind of run out of gas and they tip over, and it's been exceptionally bad. So
it could get even worse still.
It will, without a doubt. And the moose are doing fine and elk are doing fine, but the smaller ungulates are having a hard go of it. But on a positive note, yesterday I had 4 red-winged blackbirds at my bird feeder, and they were singing.
Which they must be snow crazy.
Well, they're always our first migrants to kind of come back. And when they show up, it's like, okay, that like the end is near. You can like see it from here, kind of a deal. And so yesterday was the first day we had red wings back that, we're actually singing. And I don't know what they had to sing about, but because it's pretty wide out there.
Mike's talking about hydraulics and stuff. I've read about being an airplane guy. I always wondered about things like this, and they they fly C-130s. We're going on a trip.
Well, I'm gonna see if I can just show you what Siberia looks like this time of year.
Oh yeah.
I'll walk us through the house here again. Don't look at any mess. My wife will kill me.
Okay, we're not looking.
I don't know if this is going to work or not. The sun's in a bad way.
Have you had any more sun dogs pop up?
No, I haven't seen any more of them, which is thank God.
I see some kind of critters out there.
There's horses. There's horses.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see any of that, but can you see anything?
Yeah, we can see now. We can see your hat, and we can see the chicken house, or maybe that's another outbuilding. I'm not sure.
That's my meat house.
Meat house, yes.
We have green plants here, but they're only in the house.
That one's got red on it.
It's even got flowers.
Anyway, Mike, I was reading about C-130s going to not Siberia, Antarctica in the wintertime. They've a couple of times, they've had to go down there and rescue sick people and whatnot that couldn't get out, and they can't. Nice Siberian horses you got there, Carol said. But you can't shut them down. If they shut them down, they'll get too cold and the oil will congeal, like just like you're saying, the hydraulics and everything will start freezing up on them, and then they're stuck there till they can get it warm enough.
Till summer thaw.
Yeah, which ain't much down there. I mean, there ain't a big summer thaw in Antarctica, but it does warm up some.
So a guy that was my supervisor when I first went to work in Wyoming, he's down there right now.
In Antarctica?
Yeah.
What's he doing down there?
Well, he's retired, and he volunteered for some kind of a space mission to Antarctica.
Well, actually, it is summertime down there.
He's down there taking core samples or something. He just like, hey, I'll get a free trip to Antarctica if I can volunteer with this scientific expedition. And he did it. And he called me from down there.
Oh, cool.
And literally worked.
Wow. I don't even think the lines go all the way down there. I
don't think they got telephone lines across any of that place.
I don't either. And you know what else? That's further away than Mount Pilot. Plumb over to Mount Pilot.
That's funny all day long right there.
Oh, it used to just be that.
And young people probably wouldn't get that at all.
They don't know what I'm talking about, but
they don't know what Mount Pilot is.
That's what they use. It plumb from way over Mount Pilot.
That's way over to Mount Pilot, which was like 12 miles away or
something like that.
Well, remember, so when you cross the river, when we went up to Mom and Dad's together this last trip, and we crossed the river there at Portsmouth, right in the southern tip of Ohio.
Right.
And we, drove 30 miles up to Mom and Dad's place from there. And the old people around that county, Jackson County, used to always talk about, it was a temperature gauge. So they'd say, the temperature's down about Portsmouth.
Yeah. I've heard your mother say that.
She's a famous one for saying that. And it's like, well, it's only 30 miles down the road.
Yeah. I've heard her say that many times.
But that was a big trip in the day.
Yeah, I guess so.
Excuse me.
Carol, I think you've hit the nail on the head. And what's interesting about that is, so-called climate change deniers will say, well, it can't be climate change. We got 4 inches of snow this year or something, or something ridiculous. It's plumbed down in the 20s all winter. And, but what they don't realize is the drastic shifts in weather that it's causing. Climate change in one part of the world pushes Gulf streams up, Arctic air masses down. I mean, it causes a lot of these big changes in our weather.
The problem was they called it global warming to start with.
Well, maybe that's true.
And globally, it's warming. But there are places like right here that aren't getting warmer at all.
Well, that's true.
We always ask for a little. Like, we sure could use a little global warming today.
Well, you guys complain a lot, but then you always want moisture in the summer.
And that's what it's like. We don't want snow, but we need snow.
Well, scientists screw up all the time by trying to be honest with people, but they they narrow the fact down to global warming, which is reality if you look at temperatures around the world. But that doesn't make a lot of sense to somebody that's 20 below zero.
Right.
You know, and so that's you're right. That has a lot to do with
I
why
think
it's
in
confusing.
general, weather systems are more severe, and you swap back and forth between high temperatures and low temperatures really quickly now. And
I mean, it was 80 degrees here in the last couple of days, and
in February in Tennessee,
February, yeah.
when we were kids, it never got it didn't get above freezing rarely.
Good morning. The caffeinated misfit is with us. Good morning, Rhonda. I started to say Rhoda. I don't know where that came from. Mary Tyler Moore, I guess. Pup got you early as predicted, I see. Yeah, last night we were Monarch Moments group out in California were closing up their show, and a bunch of people popped in, and Rhonda, the caffeinated misfit, there popped in. She said her pup had been getting her up early. She'd had no intentions of getting up early, but if her pup got her up early, she might pop in. Not the first time I've been called that. Well, I didn't mean to call you that. I really didn't. I mean, I'm not trying to offend anybody. I just couldn't get the right name out, which is probably not all that unusual.
Because you're old, dang it.
Because I'm old, dang it. That's right. Oh, man, I'm so tired of hearing that, too. I tell myself that every day. I wish I'd shut up. I haven't seen Michelle yet, though. Michelle Misfit.
Winter kills the bugs.
Yeah, there you go. We need more winter down here. She's in mid Georgia.
So even they have figured it out though. Like they got like up where mom and dad are at, they got those black leg deer ticks now.
Yeah,
which they never had when I was a kid. And
true.
they're just full of antifreeze, and they're literally active all winter.
Well, that's I didn't realize your ticks were busy this time of year.
And then we've got pine beetles and things like that are eating trees that used to kill them, and it doesn't do it anymore.
Oh, your day's coming, Rhonda. You'll be calling me. You'll be like my dad and my mom. They'll call me Tom, and my brother Tim, or actually, my dad bless his heart. My dad used to call me Rex, and I could blame it on old age or dementia, but he started that long before he started forgetting things. He'd call me his brother's name was Rex or Alan. He had a brother named Alan, so he would do that too. And
my folks just run through the list of grandkids and great grandkids, and they just keep hollering names out till
they get one right.
Till they hit one, like.
Hey, Dave, Adventures by Dave is here and they're having, I guess, is it Comic Con, Dave or Rhonda, down in Atlanta, or is it? Oh, there's another one they have down there. I can't think of the name of it. It's like Outer Space Con or something convention.
My daughter would love to be at that.
Yeah. I don't know if and I think they do cosplay at that, which I think your daughter and sort of son-in-law both would love.
What's that part? Is that where they dress up?
Dress up, yeah, like the characters.
Yeah, they would love that.
Which brings me to a new question. I just heard this yesterday. Don't even know how true it is, but I suspect it is true. Is that the train?
Oh, yeah.
I don't usually hear the train. Cold weather does that.
Cold weather makes it sound louder in the house. Yeah.
What was it Jimmy Stewart said in the movie?
Hot dog.
He also said, you know what the three saddest sounds in the world are? Something like train whistles, ship whistles, and something else. I can't remember what the other one was.
When you weren't on them.
Yeah, when you weren't on them. Yeah, Atlanta Comic Con, Comic Com or Con.
Because they're comic books. I mean, they started
Yeah, but
out
it's
with
comic convention, CON usually, but that don't mean that's what it is. Okay, I was starting to tell a big story. Oh,
it
I've
was
heard
about
something mention that there's a protest of sorts building. I guess they're thinking about making some more Lord of the Ring movies. And
how? Well, they already did.
and that's what people are saying now. That somebody also said if they did like Shermillion or how that's pronounced, that might be different. But I don't know what but evidently Lord of the Ring fans don't like it. They're upset about it. Or
Well,
Christopher.
they were upset about the last batch that were built, and so was I, because they totally woke that whole thing up.
Oh, you mean the Hobbit?
No. The last batch, they just did a bunch about pre.
Oh. You didn't like that?
Well, I enjoyed it, but they had taken it from the actual story so far that I was like,
Yeah,
I
okay.
mean, it was just like, oh, we got to make this more woke, which kind of aggravates me. It's like, well,
I still
that's not how that man wrote those books. That's not
true.
he this. If you're going to honor the guy that wrote the books, then you need to change that a bit. But anyway, and he's been one of my favorite authors my whole life, and I just
Yeah. Well, I get
so
that.
there are I guess I would be considered one of those bass backwards guardians of the literature, and I didn't appreciate how they changed stuff.
Well, that's a good point. I heard other people say the same thing. I didn't. I'm not. See, that's one thing about being semi-ignorant. I mean, I'm not ignorant about a lot of things, but I've not read.
I'm full ignorant on most things.
Well, but I'm not. Lord of the Rings. I've just read the basic books and stuff, and I'm not. I can't. And I really enjoyed them, and I like the Lord of the Ring movies. And I even like the Hobbit movies, even though they made 3 out of 1. But I still kind of like that. But
it was worthy.
Yeah, but I don't. When I see when one's wrong, say you tell me like this one's not correct by the book, and I knew it wasn't. But I mean, it doesn't upset me near as much as it does people that were more religious about it. And but it still amazes me that he came up with all that stuff, out of his experiences in World War I. That he must have seen some bad stuff. Well, there's my wife, Brenda Pruitt.
Good morning, Miss Brenda. Yeah, he was such a scholar of the old tales from the Norse and the Anglo-Saxons, and he blended all that with his actual life experiences during World War I and afterwards, and and the fact that he was like a country gentleman from England that grew up like a hobbit, part of his early life anyway. And
was he just a soldier in the trenches, or what was his?
He was an officer.
He was an officer. Okay,
Yeah.
That's what I figured when you said he was a country gentleman sort of person.
Well, he didn't have. I mean, he just happened to have been in college, and he got to be an officer.
Yeah, right. Well, that's
And
how our military really
works. The guy's always been one of my heroes. The first thing he did was train horses.
Yeah,
he was a cavalry officer when he first started.
It's amazing. I just heard another thing. I was reading up on some World War I. I've been doing a lot of World War I listening, reading, studying stuff of late, and especially I've been just finished a book called No Parachutes about the aviation in World War I, fighter pilots, written by an actual pilot. I learned a lot in that book that I didn't know, and British didn't have parachutes in their planes Well, nobody did for a long time, but the
And
Germans
you were
started
probably flying 20 feet off the ground.
do what?
They were probably flying right across the treetops.
Well, that sometimes they were, but sometimes they weren't. This guy was taught they flew a lot. Um, Apparently, depending on what airplane you were flying, whether it was faster than the other guys or not. The British flew some of their airplanes like the Sopwith Pup, which came out before the Sopwith Camel that Snoopy flew during the war.
Which was red.
Which was well, he got up. They had to go. They flew better higher. They could outfly the German aircraft higher. Now they weren't powered for this.
But
They had
then you
no
freeze to death.
They went up to 20,000 feet.
Demony, criminy.
And
No
they talked
option.
about how far below zero that was. And they didn't have any heaters. They're flying open cockpit airplanes. They're dressed up in these shearling suits, basically trying to stay warm. And I can't imagine being able to function at that altitude. But their airplanes outmaneuvered the German airplanes in that thinner air. Snoopy wasn't amazing. He was, Carol. He was really amazing.
He could fly that box.
And land it in the field. Oh, man. Anyway, I was learning that Manfred von Richthofen, or the Red Baron, came out of the cavalry also. There was actually quite a few pilots that came out of that service.
Oh.
Because when the war started, nobody knew what role, if any, airplanes would even play in it. And of course, the longer that war lasted, the more active the air forces became. They weren't even called that. I think the first British version was actually something like the British Flying Club or something. I mean, it was not even. They didn't incorporate it to be the RAF, British Air Force, until the end of the war, I think. But a lot of them did come out started out as cavalry people. And I don't know where they thought maybe riding a horse and galloping and shooting and carrying on was a lot like riding an airplane. I don't know. Maybe that's how they looked at it. I was going to say about the parachutes, though. One of the biggest reasons the British didn't have parachutes in World War One is because the couple reasons. There was always a rumor that it was because certain generals or leaders were afraid they would jump out of their airplane too soon if they had a parachute and wouldn't fight, which was ridiculous. But so, I mean, at the same time, then they expected them to fight like demons if they didn't have a parachute, I guess. That doesn't make sense to me. But
even that technology was brand spanking new.
It was, but they were experimenting with it. And here's the really odd thing about it. You know, they still used barrage balloons and observation balloons in World War One, and those people they put observers up in those things, and they got parachutes. They had parachutes. And it saved a lot of them, from because they got shot down pretty regular too.
Yeah, because they had no way of avoiding being
shot right. But so for a long time, it was just because the Brits, the higher ups, and the Brit, they just didn't think it was. Somebody didn't think it was a good idea, so they didn't do it. Plus, they weren't building airplanes. They talked about that too. And I've seen some of these planes; they're actually very small by any standard of today, and they didn't have enough room in them to put a parachute. They could have fixed that, and they did eventually. But anyway, it was just my little bit of Tim knowledge there. Nobody else cares about, but I just to learn they could have had parachutes but didn't.
Sure we do.
I mean, you got to think about going down in one of those things because they burn like a torch. Fabric airplanes of the day, and that's what they were all covered in then, were the fabric on those things was made stiff and hard and shrunk around the wooden frames by what we used to call dope. And it was I don't know where they got that word, but it was it's like kind of like paint, and it shrinks up the fabric and then hardens up. And actually builds a protective layer on the outside of the fabric. Bad thing about it was, especially in World War I days, that stuff was made out of, it had butyrol or something. I think it's butyrol in it, and it burned like a tip of a match. If you got any kind of fire on it, it was poof, no eyebrows. And pilots burned up on it. They jump out of their planes a lot of times just to keep from burning to death. And actually, a lot of them carried pistols, and a lot of people said that's the only reason they really did that was so they could, not burn to death. So anyway, it was a rough life being a pilot in World War II. Wasn't easy in World War II, but those guys in World War I had it kind of rough. I mean, that's why Snoopy had to wear that scarf around his neck. That thing wasn't just so they looked suave and debonair. It was. It was. Suave and debonair. Oh God, I think that might have been a Beverly Hillbillies line. I'm not sure.
Probably so. Something that Jethro Bodine said.
Surely.
When he was a double knot spy.
Yeah, it is, Carol. It's crazy. I mean, you think how bad. I mean, and this guy was able to put some of that in perspective. I mean, they felt sorry for in World War I, it was all about trenches, and that was just a terrible way to be for 5 years, killing each other off in masses, and then rotting in trenches, and the pilots looked on those guys like, oh my God, I'm but for the grace of God, I could be those guys. But and then the guys in the trenches kind of thought the same way about the pilots, because they didn't, they knew if you got shot down, chances are you weren't going to live through it. So they didn't want to do that either necessarily. But it was it's some interesting reading if you're interested in that sort of thing at all. I couldn't believe they went to 20,000 feet in those crates, because no oxygen. We wear oxygen now. It's legal. I mean, mandatory that you have oxygen on board an airplane that goes above 12,500 feet cabin pressure. So I mean, and those guys were going 8,000 more feet up, and they had to be getting crazy from hypoxia at that altitude, because there's just not enough oxygen up there to support life for very long. But they did it.
Like Sir Edmund Hillary.
Yeah.
That climbed.
I know they didn't have oxygen when he
climbed Everest with no oxygen.
There's still people do that somehow feel like that makes them more of a mountain climber, I guess. I don't know why you would want to at this day and age, although.
Well, there's skeletons all over that mountain and all the rest of them there that
mixed amongst
from those kind of folks.
Yeah, that's true. Very true.
They find a bunch of them every year, it seems like.
Well, yeah, whenever the snow's coming off certain parts of that, they do. You're right. They find mummies or not mummies per se, but you know what I mean. Mummified remains.
Well, yeah, I mean, going back to our global warming talk, that's where those kind of folks become exposed.
Yeah.
That's how they found Ötzi, that Ice Age man over there in the Alps.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the Ice Man.
Yep.
Carol said something here. Let me see. Oh, sorry, Diana. Wish you could stay. You taking Mike with you, or you going to leave him with us?
Kind of puts the perspective.
No, he's got to go too.
For the battle that they had at the public library.
Very much like that, Carol. Pretty much the same thing, exactly. Mike says they got to go. we left our TV on Ellie Mae Coconut. We're watching Mark and Tim. That's their basset hounds, Ellie Mae and Coconut. Well, they'll watch us and enjoy it. Woo! Because they're just hound dogs.
Just a hound dog.
Yeah, have a good day out there, guys. Be safe. Good Lord, don't get out there and get anything frostbit off.
Yeah,
They
definitely.
must have cars. I bet they got block warmers in their cars.
Yeah.
They never shut them off. I was going to tell you a minute ago, you were talking about truck stops. There was an outfit out of Knoxville a few years ago, and I just heard something about this in another book I've been reading.
About truck stops?
Yeah, well, the guy, do you know John McPhee? Oh man, you got to read some of his stuff. He wrote some really great books, outdoorsy kind of philosophy kind of books. But anyway, he wrote a book about what did he call it? Like he wrote part of it about the tugs operating on the big rivers. He wrote part of it about the train system in America. He wrote part of it about truck drivers in America. And seems like there was one more. Oh, well, he started talking about UPS and other air freight companies. But anyway, I hate when that happens. That idea just jumped right out on the table and took off. Let me go back and read the chat. Something made me think of it.
There's a momentary just point of confusion, like, dang it, it's gone.
You spit in my face. And if you're old enough to know what it means, then you got the same problem. My problem is I got too many things going on at once.
And it's mostly aggravating, is what it is.
Mostly aggravating. Yeah, maybe it'll pop back up here in a minute.
You were talking about truck stops in Wyoming.
Oh, truck stops. Yeah. Well, you're talking about them being full.
Yeah, they're full.
They're
overflowing.
Of course, I don't know how this would have worked now on a winter like this, but this bunch in Knoxville was trying to do their part for to cut down on diesel pollution, because these trucks pull. You know how they are. They pull into a truck stop and then just idle the trucks all night long. They don't ever shut them down or.
Well, yeah, you freeze to death.
Well, especially now, yeah. Well, these guys, they had a rig that you could pull up in a parking spot and drop the thing down and hook it up to the side of your truck, and it heated and air conditioned your truck, gave you TV cable, you had internet hookups, they had everything they needed right there, and they could cut the truck off and just let that run. But I don't think that ever floated. I don't think it ever got popular enough to keep going.
And John asked about Little America, and yet, John, Little America's, a lot of those guys love that. The Little America that's over here in my part of the state, because it's just out in the middle of nowhere and it caters to those guys specifically. And it is like overflowing. And the one in Cheyenne is overflowing, and they got trucks like just parked on the interstate. Thousands of them. They're just on a lane in the interstate, taking up both lanes. It's going to be a while for this.
Yes, John, I'm pretty sure that's Princeton's John McPhee. I'm pretty sure he teaches there or did or. But have you read some of his stuff, John? Because I really like his books. Mark Little, okay, we got that one. I'm behind, so I'm trying to catch up. Carol got power back. That was good. In-person renewal. They want to do it online. Yeah. And I saw we had new visitor Michael and Bella's travel channels in. Welcome in, folks. She can do all the rentals, etc. online, can apply, but still have to go finish it up. Stupid. Probably supposed to be stupid, I bet. Even in mixed Georgia, Ohio speak. I met him on the beach fishing about 30 years ago. Did you really?
That's cool.
Well, I believe that actually. I could see him out doing that. His books are usually well done, very thought out, and he's probably done some that are somewhat controversial about environment, and he wrote one with he took David Brower out. And if anybody knows anything about the Sierra Club, David Brower was one of the early leaders of the Sierra Club, kind of after John Muir and his ilk passed on. And John McPhee took Brower out and introduced him to some of these people that were out there doing their best to wreck the environment in their own little way. Like Dominy was the guy that built a lot of the dams in the West. He worked for the land reclamation group, which Mark probably knows, but back east we don't really know who they are much, and don't know how active they are today. They may not. It may just be part of the BLM now or something. Do you know who I'm talking about? No, they're still out.
Bureau of
Reclamation, yeah.
Bureau of Reclamation. They're super active in the West.
Okay, they built a lot of dams and did a lot of water projects at one
Otherwise,
time.
there wouldn't be no power out here.
Well, that's true. Dominy was the leading force of that at one time. I don't know when the time period was, 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe. But he said, and the name of the book was something about visitations with the arch druid or something. Because Bauer, of course, didn't want anything, no dams put up. He'd fought Ketch Dam when they dammed that up in the West, and he had tried to fight that back. Anyway, he's written some really good books. That's back when I worked part-time with a friend fishing. Oh, and you told me about that, doing guide work.
Oh, that's a hoot.
Up on the East Coast.
Yeah, we had a young man just quit like one of the local gas plants not too long ago. I had just sold him a saddle, and he decided he was going to go be a fishing guide instead of working at the gas plant. And I told him that would last about 3 months, and he'd be tired of that. and he's back to gas plant now.
Oh, yeah, I bet. I don't know. Can you stay busy out there as a fishing guide? I guess you can.
Oh yeah. But then you got to put up with those people.
Well, that's what I was getting ready to say. But you got to put up with the people that hire fishing guides, which is not always the.
No, don't cast like that. No, that's not the way you cast. No. I said put it in that hole right.
I said the fish will be up there, not down there.
I get aggravated just taking my son's father-in-law out.
Well, we won't go there. Not publicly anyway. You never know; he might be watching.
It's 10-2, man. It's just 10-2.
Not 10:30, not 10:40. 10-2. In case you don't know, that's how you fly cast. That's actually I'd say 2-10 maybe, but
it's just that.
It's just that, yeah. I know I have a friend, the guy I told you about yesterday that could find 4-leaf clovers. He and his wife are active in the local Trouts Unlimited, and his wife, and he too, but I think his wife kind of started, she was teaching women how to fly fish, and that was one of their always an issue, trying to teach that 10-2 mode. Yeah, excuse
My,
me.
my wife has arisen.
Well, good morning, wife, who has arisen.
She's taking dogs out. She's got a little dog in her arms, taking her out to go outside.
Tell her to watch out for that moose.
She won't
There's
go.
Michelle. Hey, Michelle, from Monarch Moments. Did I make it in this morning? How coherent are you? Slowly waking up. Well, that's what we on this channel call wake up faster juice right here. It's called coffee. Or if you're at my house, we call it coffee off. When Kelly was a little girl, or not Kelly, Jennifer was little, Brenda was always telling her, don't knock Dad's coffee off. Be careful around the table or the bars. Don't knock Dad's coffee off. So Jennifer grew up calling it coffee off. Instead of coffee, it was coffee off.
Coffee off.
So I still call it coffee off. Don't we, Teddy? He's sawing logs. Man, that cat can sleep. Oh, man. Let's talk about that. I'm enjoying this conversation, actually, but let's talk a little bit about that channel you turned me on to yesterday. Something else for me to spend my time doing. My wife is getting a bad impression of you. I'm gonna take a chance here and present this for a moment.
No, you're going to get banned from the YouTube again.
No, I don't think I'm not gonna play it. I'm just gonna show it. So there it is. Look at
It's
that.
worthy.
I got it right the first time and everything.
And I've always had a deep interest in the Apache wars and that part of the world, and those people, and he's done I think 3, maybe a few more on Apaches, and then he's done some on he did one about an Abenaki, a gal that was captured by the Abenakis up in the Northeast, and what trials and tribulations she went through. And it's just cool history. It's, if you like history, American history.
That was Hannah. I think that was Hannah Dustin that was captured by the Abenaki. And there was a famous painting made about a woman that was taken captive by the natives up there in that part of the world. And I don't know if that was her or if that was somebody else, but
I think that one's later.
May have been.
I think that was in New York, but yeah. Anyway, he's just got some. I just stumbled into him, and
well, you know what he's done, don't you?
I like his stuff.
He's done exactly what you and I've done our whole lives, except he put it on the YouTube first, and which is the story of my life. Somebody always beats me to the next great thing. Although a lot of people probably wouldn't see the greatness in this, I do. But yeah, like Mark said, he takes little tidbits of history that somebody mentions or he mentions or that he stumbles upon or whatever, and then he goes out and does the research on it to get to know more about it, and then he does a short video on YouTube. And like Mark said, I believe it's 3 on the Apache. And I always knew that the Apaches were kind of like the last free Indians in this part of the world. I don't know if you count. I would probably say Eskimos might have been, but that's different a little bit.
Well, these guys there were still what they always called a Bronco Apache or a wild Apache that were still running around in that country where I did my master's.
Yeah.
In the 1900s.
Up to at least 1924, and I didn't realize they were there that long.
Yep.
And I knew they made it into the 1900s, but I didn't realize they were still
Lad Pendleton, that rancher that I lived next or two, he talked about them when he was a little boy. You know that they would come in and they'd steal like a dozen mules or something, and then disappear back down into Mexico.
Well,
And
that makes sense because that's what he talks about too. They would they just weren't to be found. He told a really interesting story about um, I believe it was him, but maybe it was somebody else had written about it, and how adapted the Apache were to that environment and how they could hide and camouflage so well and not be found. And he was telling a story about how an Apache he was out with doing something, hunting or something, and they got to talking about that. And the Indian said, well, I'll show you. He said, turn around and look the other way. And when I tell you to turn back around and see if you can find me. And
he couldn't.
And he couldn't. Yeah, he turned around. And when he told him to turn back around, the guy was standing behind a little piece of brush, which if you've ever been to that part of the world, you know that could be anything from a straight stick with two limbs on it to maybe one with four, but it's, and thorns. But he was behind that bush, and when this guy walked around the bush, he couldn't find him. And when he finally gave up, the guy jumped up out of the grass, and he was less than 2 feet away from him.
Yep.
He had, within just a matter of minutes, he had stripped down, because that was the other thing. He said they tended to take their shirts off and stuff if they had them on, because they could hide their bare skin easier than they could clothing. And then he just buried himself in the dirt and the grass that was there at that place. And he said he was right there under his feet and he couldn't see him. And that's just amazing. Plus, I've always read that the Apache or the Comanche or some part of that general group of natives down there were like the best light cavalry that had ever been.
Well, that was the Comanches.
They were supposed to have been amazing on a horse or with horses. Of course, they'd also ride one to death and then just jump off of it and keep going. They were known for that too, but they're fascinating. He talked about he did one about Washington's crossing the Delaware, which is not like it's depicted in a lot of the paintings and drawings and probably some history books, but was still done and was kind of a matter of life and death. If that hadn't been victorious, that might have been the end of the American Revolution, at least at that point in time. Because most of the troops were getting ready to go home they were out of.
They're taking down that stream for sure, because you said bear skin.
Uh-oh, Carol. You don't think it would help that we passed out notes? How you might be right. Well, they weren't plumb naked. They left their breech clout on. How about that? Bear skin. Well, when you say bear skin, though, you don't know which way it's spelled. I could have meant B-E-A-R. Bear skin.
Like that guy on the remake of True Grit, when they asked that old codger in the Indian nations if there's any shelter, and he said, "Well, I have my bear skin," and he had a bear skin on.
Oh, okay. I forgot that part. I haven't seen that movie as much as you have. I've got to go back.
He's the one that had he got the dude the deceased native that was hanging. He got a hold of his carcass, and he'd taken his teeth, but he would entertain an offer for the rest of him. Because he was a dentist.
Oh, okay. Oh, he'd take an offer for the rest of him. That can be funny.
And then
I just heard something, but now I don't see it.
Naked.
Do what?
He's talking about that.
Yeah,
undergarment company.
well, it might not be, Carol. Yeah, it might be the Duluth Trading Company. They sell buck naked underwear. Oh, wait a minute. Can I say underwear? I don't. Chile. I don't get that. Carol, you've got me. My mind must not be as great as yours this morning. Chile. As in, like, it's a little Chile out here because it's, below zero, that kind of Chile. Underpants. Okay, Michelle, I'll try to remember that. I'm a little bit like President Truman was. He said the word manure one time in a speech, and a reporter came up to his wife Bess and asked her, said, "Ma'am, can you not get your husband to not say words like that in public?" And she looked at him and said, "Do you know how long it took me to get him not say the other word?" Okay, anyway. I encourage you to check this guy out. He's does have some interesting, and he does them all in shorts. Well, not in shorts. God, I'm just getting all kind. He does them all in short stories. He kind of condenses them all down to a Reader's Digest version, and gives you a little bit of history there, which I think is kind of neat. Because, like I said, this kind of thing Mark and I've been doing all our life, but nobody ever asked us to do it online or anything. I see several here I've got to go back now and watch.
Oh, there's a pile of them.
118 people slaughtered by wolves. Oh, I bet that's not true.
That was in Siberia.
Oh, well, it might have been in Siberia. Siberia.
It was a wedding. It was a wedding party.
Oh, so you've seen that one already?
I haven't watched it yet, but unlike, although recently in North America it's occurred as well, but in Europe, wolves killed people.
Well, that's where most of the scary stories about wolves actually came from.
Yeah, they weren't big. They weren't big, fluffy friends of man.
No, they were not. Thank you, Carol, for putting that up. Oh, I'm sorry, Michelle. I didn't see yours in time, but Carol's got it there. It's called Dates and
Dead Guys.
Dead Guys, and which is kind of an odd name, I guess, but that's sort of what he's talking about. Dates and history, and I heard history explained that way one time. It's about a bunch of dead dates and a lot of dead people. So I guess that's where he got that, maybe. This boat and sink. Carol said this boat is sinking faster than we can bail. That's funny. That's funny all day long. Okay, there was another something I was going to show today, I think. Let me see if I can remember what it was. It was another website. Oh, I was going to talk about a story. This one in here was about Lewis Wetzler. Do you remember reading about him? He was in the.
Are you asking me that?
Yeah, I'm asking you that because
I'm kin to him.
Oh, are you? Were you? Are you?
Yeah.
Really?
Mahans and Wetzels.
Huh. Well,
I don't know which branch of the family, but I know which branch of my family, but I don't know which. If it was like his next door neighbor's first cousin or whatever it was, but
well, he was I remember reading about him in the Eckert books and stuff like that.
He was a bit of a psychopath, is what he was.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Anybody that kills the way he did, I mean,
I think he was he selected red people out to be his target, and I think he was basically a serial killer, if you will.
Yeah, that's what we'd call him today. Oh, Carol, is that a? I'm going to make you explain that because I don't know if you're saying that in a mischievous way, if you're poking fun. And she said, "This is an interesting stream, Michelle." Well, there's been worse.
We did talk about the history of the car seat at length.
Which Mark is never going to let me live down.
Which I'm like, well, I ain't into this.
He's made me swear I won't talk about the history of the seatbelt. Every week he says, "What are we talking about this week? Because the seatbelt ain't coming." So I had to promise no seatbelts. I don't know what happened that day. I got carried away.
No motorcycle helmets, no soccer helmets, no bull riding helmets.
Oh gosh. Speaking of interesting sights and things, did you see this week's? I don't know if it was what's that guy you watched, the crazy guy that does rodeo stuff all the time? He was hanging out with JB Mooney there.
Flint Rasmussen?
No, not Flint. The other guy that says he was the world's greatest cowboy, and then he's
Dale Brisby.
Dale Brisby. I don't know if it was something off his side or if this was just JB's side. JB Mooney is like one of the all-time great bull riders. He had his yonker out there riding sheep and small bulls too. Did you see that?
I didn't, but I'll have to look for it.
Yes, you will, because I just happened upon that the other day, and I'm thinking, oh God, what are you doing, JB? That kid's only about a year and a half old.
It's all he talks about, though. The kid.
Oh, I know, and he acts just like his daddy. He got threw off, and they stuck a microphone in his face or pretended to, and he's talking about, well, he just threw me down is what he did. He took his hat, slammed it down. He grabbed that bull rope off the ground and or it was just a piece of rope, but just slung it. You know how JB will do when he's mad after he gets bucked off. Okay, Carol's got a. Well, Tim, you've got a lot of interesting content interspersed with interesting content that we are going to need to rewrite, ban, or burn. Let's don't start burning it yet.
Revisionist history.
Yeah.
She's referring back to your last stream.
Yeah, well, yeah, probably true. Oh, Carol, I love you. I'm telling you. You keep me honest to a large degree. You don't know how much. You don't know how far this can go afield if it's just me and Mark talking. Yeah, it gets even more interesting. Oh, because that's another thing. That's how the car seat thing actually got started. We were talking about crazy stuff we did as kids and how we managed to survive it.
That was supposed to be the topic.
It was. You're right. And I got started on a path and got really distracted by the evil of darkness or something. I don't know what happened there.
I have red-winged blackbirds singing outside the window right
now. I hear them. I think
they're gurgling right out the window right now.
It's really not the right time of year for that.
Well, they're the first bird we get back from migration, and they're a harbinger of good things to come. So
okay,
and they showed up
a little early. That's all I'm saying.
We had one that showed up about a week ago, and then yesterday we had 4 or 5 show up, and that's a good thing.
Thank you, Carol. I appreciate that.
It'll mean the white stuff doesn't last forever.
Did you see what Carol said about the car seat? She said it was hilarious. Oh, we were talking about things, but we started out talking about things like things we did as kids, like when we played in the barn as children. And, our parents just sort of turned us loose and we disappeared for hours at a time. And my cousin and I had this game we played where we, what we called, and I don't even know where this, well, I guess I do know where this term came from, but it's not a term you hear much anymore. And we scaled the barn. And scale is another word for climb. It's sort of like the word purchase. You get a purchase on something, but it's not buying something; it's grabbing a hold of it. And we would climb up the outside walls of the barn and see which one of us could get the highest and go the furthest around the walls or outside the barn. It was sort of like being a Batman or something before we ever knew there even was a Batman. And we get out there and do that for hours on end, and how neither one of us ever happened to fall and break a neck or even a leg is still beyond me. Maybe we were just really good at it. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe we were really good barn scalers. And it just, I just now thought of that. Maybe it wasn't near as dangerous for us as other people might have thought. And I'm pretty sure other people would have thought it. Because my mom used to she'd find out about something like that and she'd just want to beat the tar out of me. But that's just how it went. But
Roy Purcell and I were doing that inside of that big old barn that Joe had down by the big gum tree down there in the bottom.
Yeah.
And I caught my right hip on a 16 penny nail and slipped.
Oh.
And laid me open like on my right thigh. It was never reported as an injury.
In other words, you didn't tell your mom.
I got a great big scar there, but it was never reported as an injury. And I had 4 million tetanus shots, so I knew that I was good.
That was my next question.
Dr. Lynch had set me up for life.
I promise you, if you'd been there, whether you had one last week or 6 months ago, you would have got another one.
Oh, you boys need tetanus shots every time I see you.
Yeah. And this is why. I'm afraid to let Gabriel pray on the front alone. Well, that's just it, Michelle. I think we're all kind of like that. Sort of.
That's the way we've gotten to be. I mean, I got like all these grandbabies, and I won't just like turn them loose and let them go ride that horse.
Like they probably did you.
But I was 5 years old, and they're like, "Here's your saddle. That's your pony. We'll see you tonight for supper."
You get home for supper, you go to bed hungry.
And it was that way.
That's the way we did too. I mean, my cousins, again, the cousin I'm talking about, they had ponies, and that's why I loved going over there so much, because we could get out and ride those ponies and go all over the countryside. And we was just like that. We'd take off in the middle of the day or in the morning and go somewhere. And bear in mind that we didn't have no money, much less there being a McDonald's somewhere on the street corner. We could have pulled up to a little store and got a bologna sandwich or something,
or robbed a neighbor's garden.
Or robbed the neighbor's garden.
I got many a meal from the neighbors.
But we'd be gone all day long, and they
literally
they wouldn't even call for us. I think we were out of their hair. I think maybe that says a lot about how mischievous we were. They wanted us out of the house bad enough to send us out on our own.
Well, remember that big old cow horn that Dad had that he blew to call me home?
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be dark and I'd be out there doing whatever, squirrel hunting or whatever, and he'd blow that horn, and then I'd come home for supper.
I remember that. He was still blowing that horn when I met you. Carol, I'm going to say that's probably a pretty good idea, but I also think that's cheating just a little bit. Does Sydney know you're tracking her? Or he? I guess that's a she. Do they know you're tracking them that way? They'd probably throw that watch away. I would have left it laying in the barn or something. Hooked it to the dog's collar. And then they would have thought I was just running around playing somewhere.
Dropped it in the creek, or
I can pretty much guarantee you that would have happened. The creek from my part of the country was always, hey, Dean, welcome in, buddy. The creek was always a major part of our activities if it was warm enough to get in. There wasn't ice on it. I bet we built a dam in that creek every summer for at least 10 to 15 years while I
had to have a swimming hole.
Well, yeah, you got to have a swimming hole, and that's also where some of the best grapevines were located.
Yep.
We probably did that judiciously so we'd have a grapevine to swing off of. So here's what you did. You got up on the highest bank, depending on which side of the creek you were on, and you took a big run and go on a grapevine, and you swung way out there, and then sometimes you let go and splashed in water that was really only about this deep. It wasn't very deep usually. And then you jumped up and ran and done it again.
All day long.
And if you broke something or hurt it, as Mark says, those were injuries that went unreported. We had one of my cousins, my cousin Bruce and I were 2 days difference in age, and we were really a lot alike in many ways. And this is on my mom's side of the family. So he and I, neither one of him or I were allergic to poison ivy growing up. So we could lead adventurous other youths into the ivy patch, and we wouldn't get messed up, but they'd get eat up. And yeah, we could lay down and roll around in it, and we never got the first scratch. But he had an older brother that couldn't even look at it sideways, and he was invariably going out to the creek or swinging on the grapevine and end up, which is really most of the time, half the time, it's a big old poison ivy vine anyway, and end up with poison ivy all over his body. We got in trouble for that a couple of times, like, don't take him out there.
Don't be feeding him green persimmons.
Yeah. There's Tina. Welcome in, Tina. She's probably been here all along.
She's missed all the good stuff.
He said her dad used to whistle. You could hear it down in the creeks and up any tree. I always wanted a tree house of the worst kind, especially after I saw Swiss Family Robinson for the first time. Carol claims that Sydney likes it because she can text and call us on her older siblings on it, but nobody else. Well, I guess that's okay. One of these days, she's going to look back on that, though, and think,
just threw a bag. Carol threw a bag of frozen peas on that goose egg and headed back out to play.
Exactly.
And that was the key. It was all outside play.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, my mom, of course, there wasn't any video games, and there really wasn't much on TV. When you only get one or two channels, usually it's Captain Kangaroo in the morning, or back then it was, or it was Bozo the Clown. And other than that was pretty much it for children type viewing. And my mom just as soon I wasn't in the house the rest of the day. So
then your mom had to watch her stories.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh my God. My mother watched soap operas all her life.
Mine too.
That's why I can tell you how long some of them are on. Oh, Tina says no, she hasn't. Mark, just not feeling very. Oh, she's not feeling very good.
Oh, I'm sorry about that, Tina.
Okay, her mom was mad about the wasted green peas, frozen peas.
But there ain't no such thing as a wasted green pea. That's the best use of a pea, is to use it as a bag of ice.
Oh well,
because they're not an edible food source.
I think that's the way I look at lima beans.
And I feel the same way about lima beans.
I can't eat peas though.
I have eaten lima beans in sea ration cans that were mixed with ham that I, as a young child, thought was okay.
Well, did they call that
Ham and mothers?
Ham and what?
That's what the boys called them in Vietnam. Ham and mothers.
Well, what there was a turkey loaf.
Mothers was a shortened version of something worse. So.
Yeah, for the beans. I got you. Yeah, Tina, I'm sorry you're not feeling well. How's Chuck? Is he okay? Tina says her mom used to just throw them back in the freezer. Well, if nothing else, they make a good ice bag, later on down the road.
I still think that's where the person that came up with all these gel packs, like, they got the idea from a bag of frozen peas.
Oh, they probably did. I wouldn't doubt that a bit. Had to come up with them somewhere.
Or a big old piece of steak they threw on your black eye.
I can actually remember that. I've seen people do that.
So have I. I've had that done to me, as a matter of fact. I had a bad encounter with a little sister and a 1960 Fisher Price telephone.
Oh.
That was used as a mace.
So did you get hit by the phone end or the big?
I got hit by the big phone, the big wooden block phone end. She had a hold of the handset. She swung that around just like a mace and hit me in the eye. And I've had some pretty good horse buck-offs that involved my face. And that's still the worst black eye I've ever had, was when Lisa hit me with the telephone. And I was just being good and not doing nothing, I'm sure.
I'm sure you weren't. Dean said the frozen vegetables were never out long enough to thaw it. Kids are resilient and quick to get back to playing. Plus, frozen peas hurt. If you're not ready for it, it starts to hurt after a bit. You figure you might as well go out and play herd. Okay, Tina, I hope you guys get to feeling better. Which reminded me of something I was going to say about green peas. Oh, one of the worst
edible.
One of the worst things I ever did to my brother was throw a handful of sand in his face one time. And we were having some kind of dispute. We were outside playing in the quasi sandbox we had. And I don't know if we were having a fight or what, but I did that, and then I regretted that from the moment I did it. I thought I put his eyes out. Fortunately, I did not. They were able to flush him out, and he was fine. Oh, my goodness. What a sound. We were upstairs watching TV last night, and I told Brenda to be quiet. And we got real quiet, and Teddy was laying in the chair snoring. Either that or he was having a heck of a dream.
How come you guys are all being needy?
We were talking last night, not last night, Thursday night. I don't know if it was during the chat or after. I had asked Mike and Diana to hang around for a few minutes so I could thank them for being on the show, and we ended up talking for a half hour. And we were talking about basset hounds, but that might have been while we were still on the show because they were telling me the difference in Euro breed basset hounds and American basset hounds, which I didn't know. I didn't know there was such a thing. And they got one each apparently. And the Euro ones have more flappy skin, which might make them good for badger fighting. You can't get a hold of them.
Yeah.
And the American ones, they both have the same stubby legs, so they're neither one of them's good in the snow. Neither one of them's good in the snow. But that was the difference, which brought up the point of Boudreaux. And I was wondering how he's getting through the snow these days.
So our drifts are, it is warmed and thawed and refrozen and warmed and thawed and refrozen. So all the new snow we get, it's on top of many feet of other snow that's hard. Frozen. And so he's fairly good at getting around, and there's a great big giant drift. He was barking yesterday, and there's a big drift in the corner of my yard that goes all the way up onto the roof of my chicken house. And there's dog tracks all over the top of the chicken house.
That's an exploration if you're a dog the size of Boudreaux.
And he got out. We had that cow moose behind the house yesterday, and he was out standing on the drifts barking at her. And she was actually eating snow at the time, and she didn't pay any more attention to him. His little old stumpy dog, and she was just doing what she was doing, and he was about 10 feet away from her barking.
Well, if she's the same one that harassed you all summer when it was warm months, she probably seen him around anyway. Just kick him in the next week.
I'm sure she's one of the 2 cows we kept getting in the yard. So
yeah.
Well, their dogs are cute at home because she was laying at the swing set this morning. So.
Yeah. Their dogs are cute and big. I mean, basset hounds are, we think of basset hounds because they're low to the ground as being little dogs, but they're not little dogs. They're big dogs. They just got little bitty legs, which made them good for chasing down badger holes, I reckon.
I remember that there was a deal in the 2 Little Savages where they were talking about measuring tracks and estimating leg length, and you could maybe tell what the critter was you were looking at by looking at track size. And Sam talked about, I got a critter that you wouldn't be able to do that with, and he said it looked like a coonhound that was raised underneath a bureau.
I don't remember. Was that
which is another one of those? And it was talking about a basset hound, and but bureau's another one of those good words like purchase.
Yeah, chaperone. I guess a bureau would be a chest of drawers.
Yeah.
Relative. I mean, I was thinking it might be like a wardrobe, but it's more like a chest of drawers.
It's a chest of drawers, yep.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Boudreaux is having some adventures this winter. Oh, yeah. I'm actually surprised he wasn't running through the snow. I could see him making tunnels.
He does make furrows.
I bet he does.
But I mean, after a few days, it's a hard path that he zips down them. And
are his feet big enough and broad enough to snowshoe a little bit?
Well, when the drifts are, getting a little more solid, they are.
Crusty, yeah. Tina, you didn't leave. You're still here. See, you can't live without us. Oh, mercy. Dogs.
Well, I got a whole passel of them right here at my feet that are like, hey, show me some attention.
What you doing up there?
My Vizsla is sitting here with her head on my knee.
Wrong time of year for her. She's wanting to go bird hunting or something.
She's a Velcro dog, we call her.
Yeah.
You got wet ears. What? Oh, you've been letting that dog lick your ear over there. Yuck. Go away.
Speaking of adventures around the barn, I bet you never got chased by no chickens either, no roosters. Or did you ever get chased by a goose?
Me?
Yeah.
No, but we had. I saved a big white leghorn rooster's life one time. My great grandmother, and my grandma were killing hens,
Oh.
and they bought. My grandpa went to like some farm sale and bought like 40 chickens and brought them home. And they went to harvesting chicken meat.
Oh, okay.
And one of the earliest memories I have is the dancing chickens in the yard while my grandma was like chopping their heads off with an axe. And they had a great big, one of the birds was a big white rooster. And I asked my grandpa if I could have him. And we had a few laying hens, and he gave me that rooster. And that our driveway went down the hill past the barn out to the mailbox, and it was my job to go to the mailbox every day. And I'd walk by that barn, and that rooster would lay there on his belly waiting on me. And then he'd come out and flog me when I walked by. And he got to doing that with Mom. And Mom started complaining to Dad. And Dad's like, oh, it's just a chicken. You don't worry about it, you know. And he'd come up, he'd sneak up behind you and jump up and dig his spurs into your back.
Yeah, they can hurt.
And Mom finally like laid down the law and said that rooster needs to go away. So Dad ran him into the barn, closed the barn door, and it was like a cartoon. It was the barn was lifting off its foundation, and there was just banging and noise. And Dad came out in about 15 minutes with that rooster. He was all bloody and gave that rooster back to my grandpa, and Grandma made soup or whatever out of him. And he my grandpa said that was the toughest bird I ever ate. When I was only like 5, Dad had just got out of the Marine Corps. I was only like 5 or 6 years old. And I swear that chicken was as tall as I was.
Well, he might have been about been. Tina said they had a half inch or more ice on top of their snow the other day, and you should have seen Danny at their town, trying to walk around on top of it. His legs were going 15 ways to Sunday. I've seen a dog do that, skating around trying to get purchase.
One of the funniest things I've ever seen is a Chesapeake Bay Retriever that was not a very smart dog. We were working a check station by a big farm pond one day, checking goose hunters, and this somebody had shot this Canada goose, and it had they didn't kill it. It had a broken wing. It landed on that pond on the ice. And one of the guy at the check station that I was working with that had that dog, he had to point the dog at him like a gun just to get him to see it. And then he said, fetch. And that dog took off across that ice to grab that goose. And the goose was like a matador. He'd just like step to the side. And that dog would go shooting past him like 20 yards. And he'd turn around, those claws grabbing onto the ice, you know, click, 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 click. And he'd turn around, come charging back. And I bet it took that dog 25 or 30 minutes to catch that bird. It was like, good God.
I don't know much about Chesapeake Bay Retrievers. Are they smart dogs, aka like I consider a Labradors tend to be smart dogs. Are they anything like a lab or?
None of the ones I've ever known are. They're really good retrievers. They're strong retrievers. Um, they're good dogs, but they're not. I don't consider them at the same intelligence level that a Labrador would have. And they're kind of a big hard head dog. They're real goers. They'll just keep going in pretty difficult conditions, and but I never saw a guy like risk his life to go if he had one go through the ice. Like never saw a guy like run out there and risk his own life to get the dog out of the ice. When it was a Chessie versus a Lab. But they're such powerful dogs. They just
Tina says they are not known for high IQ. I've never been around one. I mean, I've
my
seen
son has one, and he's actually a special dog. He's
Oh,
he's got dog like autism for real, and
yeah.
he has issues, but he's kind of my buddy. But you know he's just not the sharpest tool in the shed.
Michael and Bella's Travel Channel says they have to go. Thanks for coming in, guys. Really appreciate it. I hope we hadn't just bored you entirely to tears, but this is kind of how some days this is just how the coffee flows until we have to get up and run to the bathroom. Can I say bathroom? Is that okay? My mom used to tell stories about being growing up on the farm, and her and dad both grew up, Depression era kids, and of course they lived on the farms and they grew and raised everything they ate and milked their cows and gathered their eggs. And when I was growing up, they used to send me out to the barn to gather eggs. So every once in a while we'd get chased out of the barn by an old bitty hen or a rooster. But mom used to hate to go. The one thing she hated about going out to the barn in her growing up days was the goose. They had a big goose of some sort. I don't know if it was a big gander or a goose, but that thing, every time she'd go out to the barn, it would come after her, hissing
And bite her.
biting, nipping at her. She hated that. She hated that goose. She still hated that goose when I was a kid, and that goose had been dead 30 years. I mean, she still didn't like geese. Nothing about them. And bless her heart, she couldn't stand the kitten. Of course, they always had barn cats, back then around the barn. I mean, if it wasn't a cat, it was a black snake in the barn, trying to fend off the mice and whatnot. But her brothers were a bit devilish. And, my mom was 5'2", soaking wet in high heels, and her brothers were all well over 6 feet tall, and they must have just been really, really mischievous when it came to the girls. And they were all time. Apparently, when mom was growing up, anytime they'd have a litter of kittens or something out in the barn, they'd go get them and bring them up and put them right up in mom's face and scare mom with them. So when I was growing up, we had a litter of cats born around the house. She didn't want nothing to do with them until they got up big enough to have their eyes open and were getting around motivating on their own. She was scared to death of them. Of course, that bunch was also bad to take them all down to the river in a gunny sack and throw them in too, if they didn't want more cats around the house.
Yeah, that's jumping back in time there.
Yeah.
Although the ranch kids in this country, they don't usually act on it. But that's the way you get rid of puppies.
Oh, really?
You go to the Ridley's grocery store and you sit out there in your little cowboy hat and your cowboy boots, looking cute, and you sit there with a box full of puppies.
Yeah.
And their main line is, well, my daddy said that whatever ones I bring home they're getting chucked into the river tonight.
No.
And of course, people are like, well, you're not doing that. And they take the pups. so you're like salespersons, young, and learn to be like a salesman at early age.
That's kind of a horrible thing, but
it is a horrible thing. But it works. It's
probably an effective line.
It's effective with most of the people in town. Like, no, you're not going to drown those pups. You're going to give me one of them or two of them. Or
I never was that kind of kid. I didn't like to mistreat critters. I didn't. I had a couple of other cousins on mom. They were on mom's side of the family too, but her oldest sister's kids, and they used to talk about hanging cats out on the clothesline when they didn't want kittens, and I just couldn't stand the thought. And they might have just done that told me that because they knew it upset me. I don't know, but I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to tell. When you grow up around people that have that kind of sense of humor, sometimes you never know.
That's a fact.
First dog I ever remembered was found in a box in the road in France. Oh, really, Tina? They do that over there too, huh? Oh, Mark and I'm sure he remembers this, but that's something else that gets done in Appalachia a lot. Is people will take dogs out and just turn them loose somewhere and then drive off. And, and just, I don't know what the mindset with that was, but I guess they figured somebody take them in. But do you remember how bad the dogs got down along the river there for a while? People had turned out so many they were packing up and chasing deer and chasing hunters and all kinds of stuff. I thought that was
remember that dog we brought back there from Montana.
Oh yeah,
Gypsy. Yeah. She was, when we found her, she didn't have a pad on her feet.
Oh wow!
So she was probably towed out of a moving vehicle, actually.
Damn.
And
see, I'd like to skin somebody for that. I'd like
to. Me too. And she was a great dog.
Yeah, I remember Gypsy well.
We had her forever. The only thing she was bad about was that Dad always thought she was a coy dog.
Yeah, I remember him saying that.
And she didn't like little things. Lisa was leading her down the road one day and she jerked out of her hand, and the old lady had this little yappy dog that she sicked on, like the kids as they were walking by, and she sicked her out, and Gypsy pulled out of Lisa's hands and chased that dog right into the house and caught it. And then I don't remember what the vet bill was, but it was extensive. And then that dog, like the week after it healed up, went out. She sicked it out the door, and there was old women where I grew up and where Tim grew up that sicked their dogs on you.
They would. they would. And if they catch you close enough, they'd hit you with a broom or a walking stick too.
And she sicked that dog out the door at somebody, and it ran out there on the little road on that Mount Zion road, and it got bull squished by a vehicle. And it's like, and we had just paid to have it repaired.
Oh no. Oh, it turned it into a sale pup.
I remember Dad saying that was a heck of an investment.
Yeah. Tina was saying, how did you fostered those dogs, right? See, she was going to leave. Now she's invested. Carol, I never liked kids that bragged about hurting animals either. I used to know kids and whether they ever did it or not, I don't know. They'd talk about, Mark's heard of this, I'm sure, but turpentine the cat. Take a corn cob or something and rub a cat's behind and pour turpentine all over it. There ain't nothing faster than that. That's faster than that's stronger than holy water. The joke used to go, but you remember that?
Oh yeah,
holy water, and kid says, "I know something stronger than holy water." He said, "What's that?" Turpentine on a cat's ass. So anyway, back to Tina's question. She said they thought their dogs were found or may have been deserted in South Carolina, which makes sense. So how did they end up your way in New York, Tina? They get picked up by a rescue group that moved them around the states to find owners or forever homes? Because I think she was telling me that they fostered dogs. No, we adopted them about a year apart. Oh, okay. We know
get a lot of dogs from the Carolinas.
Huh. That's interesting. I hear about dogs getting moved around like that. I've seen them on TV doing that kind of thing. It's kind of crazy. Of course, people won't have their. That also drives me crazy when they won't have their dogs or cats spayed or neutered, and then they just let them run wild. And you know how cats are; they're having kittens all over the world, and there ain't nothing more popular in the neighborhood than a female dog in heat. So every dog for 3 counties will come to town.
We have several. I've seen over the. We live on this outskirts of this town of 68 people, and we have several cats that come visit the house here. My wife wants to take them all in, but they're I just see them periodically. I don't know I don't know where they hang out when it gets to be bad winter, but they're over here a lot during the summertime, and they can come here and hunt mice all they want to. We always had a problem with feeding them. If you fed them, like if you had cats move into the barn or something, feral cats, and you started feeding them a lot, they'd just quit hunting mice.
Yeah, well, that's to some degree anyway. But that's what I'm opening a can of worms here, but I'm going to say it anyway. We had problems with cat colonies on some of our properties, and the popular notion these days is you can't eliminate those colonies. You've got to catch them, spay them, and neuter them, and then release them. And then they want to say we'll keep them fed, and that way they won't be killing wildlife. But that's not true. Hell, I've fed cats all my life that were outside cats, and they were always bringing stuff to the doorstep. They weren't eating them; they were just killing them. And that's what these cats would do. But people they didn't understand that part of cat logic. And
we had cats that were like pretty brightly colored once upon a time. They weren't like a tabby cat that can hide anywhere. They had big splotches of white on them. They'd look like a paint horse or something. Great big white places on them, and they'd sit underneath our hummingbird feeders. And none of them had front claws, and they'd jump up and catch those hummingbirds and they were good at it.
Yeah.
And it always hacked me off because I wanted the hummingbirds, and so we'd have to lift the feeders up higher, just kind of mitigate that issue. But they're good at what they do. Cats are good at catching stuff, and it's just
instinct.
It's just what they're going to do.
Yeah, that's what they're built for. That's how they earn a living. Cats are invasive species like pigs and anacondas. Well, yeah, you're right, Tina. That kind of cat came out of Europe. I mean, in Asia or Africa, maybe Asia too, but they weren't common. They weren't over here until domestic cats came over with the Pilgrims or whoever. And now they are everywhere. Another train. Yeah, I hear it. I swear I don't ever remember hearing a train on here before. But they just,
Well, it's cold outside, so like I said, it just sounds like they're coming through the house when it's cold.
another story about that McPhee wrote about train guys that travel through your country. Actually, they did. I don't know if they still are, but coal trains running out of Wyoming back east for the different coal-fired plants. Because I guess I didn't realize this. I thought it was the other way around, but apparently some of those Wyoming coal mines were lower sulfur than stuff back here.
Yep, way
So,
lower
so they were
sulfur.
hauling it back here from out there, and the guy was talking about when it got really cold out there, they'd take paper towels and wet them, and they'd stuff them in along the edges of the door and the cabs, and when they froze, they would block the wind. Okay, going to lay back down. Still listening. Okay, Tina, when you get back in the conversation again, we'll be careful about drawing you off the couch. I love train sounds too, man. I used to love to lay in bed at night and listen to the trains go by when I was growing. We'd stay at Grandma's because she lived about 100 yards from the train tracks. Which were up on a ridge, and we were down in the holler, and they would run down along that train, which was actually a great form of amusement and entertainment for me as a child. Because we'd get up on the banks of the railroad ran through some pretty high banks, and we'd get up there and chuck apples and rocks and whatever we could find at the train. I don't know what we thought we were going to accomplish, but it was great fun to see if you could hit the train. Kind of hard to miss the train, actually. Oh me, that was part of the country where they
when the 0342 comes through at my house and cranks off that horn, I don't appreciate them at all.
No, I told you about moving into Knoxville and not realizing I was sleeping about 100 feet from the railroad track near a crossing, and they come flying through there in the middle of the night. First night I was there, sound asleep, and he laid on that horn, and I came out of that bed and just about soiled my knickers because I did not realize the train was there and that close. After that, it never bothered me again, but that first night it jolted me out of bed.
Well, we had the derailment right here in front of the house.
Yeah,
that'll wake you up in the early of a morning.
I thought about you when this one crashed in Ohio the other day. I thought, damn, that could have been at Mark's house. You guys didn't have any kind of spillage, though, did they?
No, I think they were hauling trona or some kind of dry mineral, you know.
Oh yeah, that's what they dig. That's something they dig up in there, isn't it?
Yep.
For mine. Do you know where that East Palestine is, or Palestine, whatever they call it in Ohio?
So I looked that up. That's kind of it's kind of southeast of Cleveland. It's right over by Pennsylvania border, and
okay.
It's pretty far north of Mom and Dad, 3 hours or so.
Oh, that's good.
So yeah, they don't have any operating railroads down in Mom and Dad's country anymore, which is kind of sad because I mean you had train tracks all over the country down there, you know.
Isn't it amazing that you used to be able to hop on a train and go just about anywhere in the country?
Well, and they're trying to resurrect. I saw there's some legislation they're working on trying to get passenger trains back on all these existing rail, and that every town it'd be like a Greyhound station, you know. Probably not every little town, but most of the towns will have a depot for passenger transport again, which would be kind of cool.
Oh, I think so. You know, it used to be that way. Jonesboro had Depot Street, which is exactly what it sounds like. Johnson City had a depot. For all I know, they may have had more than one depot for different railroads, but mainly in Johnson City, it was the East Tennessee and Western North Carolina line, which is where it's where the Tweetsy Railroad actually came from. If you remember Tweetsy,
Right?
Tweetsy had become an
Yeah,
amusement
I
park
haven't
kind
heard
of.
that name in a long time.
Yeah, but they were a real deal, and that was the name of a train that E10WNC ran through North Carolina and Tennessee because of the sound the horn made on it. It was a steam train,
Right.
and most of the people up there could hear the whistle and know it was coming, and know it, it became known as the Tweetsy. And when they shut that down and Texas in the sky or the Cowboys on top of the mountain or whatever they called it opened up. Well, Tweetsy Railroad became an amusement park, but
Right.
it was the actual train that had been, Tweetsy when they were actually still hauling freight and people. But, they mom talks about riding the trains in and out of town and stuff. They would actually catch them up near the crossing. They'd stop and pick them up sometimes. I don't know how often they did that or if that was a regular thing, but it cost them a dime or something to ride into town. But that they would do that. She said that was a big, trip for them when she was a kid. So
Yeah, we still get a fair amount of, for lack of a better term, hobo traffic on trains out here that are, people hopping the trains in Nebraska or whatever and traveling across Wyoming and like, what the heck have we done? Where's all the towns out here?
yeah, where'd they go? Well, they never were here, son. They I actually think I think I read or heard somewhere again. I read a lot, but some of it don't make sense sometimes. But sometimes it's just in chunks. But seems to me like I'd heard recently or not too long ago that hobo traffic had actually picked up again.
Yeah,
Hobo traffic, as in people that hop trains and travel
it's
around.
real. It's pretty heavy through Wyoming.
That's kind of interesting.
They don't get off here very often.
I wonder why.
Yeah,
Ain't
long
nothing there.
long walk to the next something.
Oh, I was, back here there were families that used to hop the train here or like over at grandma's, and they would hop the train going up a grade and load up a bunch of burlap sacks with coal. Because that's pretty much the long trains were all coming out of coal fields. And, especially after they quit, hauling passengers and whatnot. And they'd fill up gunny sacks and throw them off the side of the track. And then they'd walk back later and pick them up and heat their house with them all winter. They did that pretty regular. Oh. The chat went quiet. I don't know
I
if
thought I had a real dove out here.
Not a ringneck?
No, I thought it was a real dove, like a mourning dove, but it's not. It's a collared.
Oh, I meant collared. That's what I meant, not ringneck.
Yeah, there's two of them sitting out here. When I first saw three of them, when I first saw them, I thought they were actual native doves.
Well, there's not, as we have discussed, those things are all over the country now.
Yep, they are widespread.
Michelle says she believes that the hobos are hopping trains because there's so many people out of work. Well, that's
Could
how
be.
it started before.
Yep.
Started, but was a lot of people were on trains that were out of work.
That's how you got around, moved across the country or whatever.
Some people were following agriculture around the country to get jobs doing that, and some were doing other things. And
I don't know if they still got bulls, like checking cars, or
I'm sure they still have some kind of security. I don't know if it's like it used to be or not. I heard that. So I heard somebody use that term just the other night, bulls, and I hadn't heard that in years. But that was, if anybody else doesn't know, that was the police, the security for trains were called bulls, and they'd run all the hobos off the train.
They were just big guys with clubs.
Big guys with clubs, exactly.
They, if you remember in "Old Brother, Where Art Thou," they sing that song at the start of the movie, the Big Rock Candy Mountain.
Yeah.
And one of the lines in that is the railroad bulls are blind.
Yeah, I do remember that. Watch out for the bulls. Have you ever heard them talk about the hobo stops had hobo towns and there was another name for them, but there was places where they would stay where they were reasonably safe, when they were traveling, and they had their own code, kind of. They'd carve on trees or scribble on rocks that pointed that, like, the nearest house with water or the nearest place to get a good pie out the window, or just all kinds of stuff like that. Maybe someplace they could pick up work for a couple of days and eat. And
a pie out of the window.
I just said that, but
But that's how they are always depicted, stealing a pie out of the window.
Exactly. You remember Andy Griffith, where Buddy Ebsen was playing the hobo and the boy?
Yeah.
They were taking him food. He told them he was being Robin Hood, and they were the merry men.
Right.
Aunt Bee's pies kept disappearing. So if they'd ever given me those kerosene pickles she made, the hobos would have left town. You remember that? Kerosene pickles.
They were taking the pickles out of the jar and replacing them with store-bought pickles, and she thought they were the best ever.
Yeah, so she kept making more.
and
they were awful.
And they kept like handing them out as like souvenirs at the Barney would meet them on the edge of town, like, you're the 5,000th visitor to Mayberry this year, and we're giving you some pickles.
We're gonna give you a jar of our famous pickles. Don't you know they were surprised when they got those pickles open? Apparently they were horrible. Oh, those are funny days. I wish we could still be funny. I mean, evidently people don't think that kind of humor is funny anymore. Phone call alert. I probably ought to start winding down here. I just looked at the time. I'll wait till he gets back. Carol, you got any plans for the rest of the day? Or Michelle, or anybody that's left in here? Tina, you don't have to get up off the couch. That might be about all that's left, actually. I bet Brenda's not in here either. I bet she went back to sleep. Oh, that's right. Well, tell Key I said happy belated birthday. It was a couple of days ago, wasn't it? The day you guys were out of power? Thursday, I think. Well, I hope you have a good birthday celebration today. Is he getting a special birthday cake? I just made homemade gluten-free blueberry muffins and homemade banana caramel oatmeal while we were chatting. Well, some of that sounds good. I'm just not, I'm not that gluten-free kind of guy, but oh, Brenda said she's still here. Well, how about that? Here, I thought she'd done fallen asleep. Well, brother, I think it's time to let everybody go about their merry way. Oh, Michelle says I'm fixing my car today. The armrest replacing the vinyl. Oh, you should video that and show it to everybody. See how that works out.
Replacing vinyl.
I missed the cooking. They made some kind of cauliflower steak last night or something on their show, but when I got to watching it, it looked like it was a big brownie. Was that the cauliflower steak, or was that? She's considering that. Brenda should record some of her apron sewing projects. There's probably somebody that would sit and watch those too. They did. Oh, you did both. Okay. All right, guys. I'm going to start winding down. I'm running out of voice muscles, and it's about time to go. My behind parts are getting a little sore. Steak was really good. Man, I'd like to have a steak right now. Nice and just.
Was it steak or cauliflower?
Well, it was somehow. I think it was somehow coated with cauliflower. Maybe like crumbs. I don't know. I missed that part, so I didn't get to see it. I'll have to go back and look it up. But she made a big old brownie, and I know Gabe was trying to get in it. Gabe's their youngin', their smallest youngin', and he was really keen to get him another piece of that. Oh, it was meatless. Oh, okay. Now, never mind. I shouldn't say that. All cauliflower. Well, I will have to go back and check that out. Not sure how you get a steak out of cauliflower.
I've seen them make chicken wings out of it.
Unless, of course, cauliflower was the name of the cow. Somebody's pet cauliflower. Okay, guys. Thank you, Carol and Michelle, for coming in, and everybody else that's been here and come and gone. And appreciate you guys coming in. I'll try to have a more settled line of discussion for next weekend. But today was a good day just to talk about falling out of the barn and such. Yeah, I gotta watch Dave today later on or something, see if he's at that Comic-Con. You never know what's gonna pop up. You never know who's gonna show up at one of those kind of things. I always have to think about the Big Bang Theory and when the boys would go to a Comic-Con if they could get tickets. And then they'd all have to figure out who was gonna go as what character. And then one time they all picked Flash. And then they had to argue over who would be Frodo or who would be, Bilbo Baggins or that was a funny show. Hey, speaking of that, did you ever watch I gotta say this before I forget it. The Mandalorian. You remember the guy in Big Bang Theory that was the geologist professor?
My favorite character. He was my
he was in that movie. He was in that show. The first
he rock show.
He was in the first few minutes of the Mandalorian. He was driving a speeder. They parked their space vehicles out on this lake, I guess, frozen over ice, and that's where the parking areas were. And he came in and picked them up, and he took off his helmet or his goggles, and I told Brenda, I said, "Oh my God, look who that is!" It was that guy, and he took them out to their shuttle that he flew. The Mandalorian flew around Razor Crest, and he said, "I wouldn't stay on the ice too long if I was you guys." He said he was some sort of space critter that was in the lake and or in the water, and he took off. He took off and out across the lake, heading back into shore, I guess. And you saw the ice ripple up, and all of a sudden this critter come up and grabbed him and took him and the speeder both under. And that was his whole part of the show. He was done. That was the end of his Mandalorian. Yes, he was, Michelle. That was the same guy, if you know who I'm talking about. And I didn't have to worry about squirrel chasing because everything was a squirrel today. That's exactly right. All right, everybody. You guys have fun. I'll see you later. See you next week. And everybody have a great weekend. See ya. Boink.